What if I told you that Jay Silverheels' real life was much darker and more complicated than you might think? Behind his beloved role as Tonto, there was a life full of untold struggles, unexpected turns, and a tragic ending that few people know about. From the haunting story of his abandoned house to the complexities of his marriage, Silverheels had a journey that was very different from the hero he played on screen. Stay tuned as we explore the real life of Jay Silverheels, a man whose life was as complicated, and the roles he played, from a Native American on a Canadian reservation to a stuntman in Hollywood, were just as interesting. Even though the name Jay Silvers sounds like a real Native American name, it was actually a stage name he chose for his career in show business. He wasn't born Avestein, he was born Harold J. Smith in 1912. His father, George Alexander Smith, was the most decorated native soldier in the Canadian Regiment during World War I, fighting for a country that saw his people as second-class citizens. He grew up in southern Ontario. As a child, Harry Smith was naturally drawn to lacrosse, a sport that was almost as popular in Canada as hockey. It was created and played by native peoples across North America as both a game and a way to settle disputes between tribes before Europeans came. Silverheels was good enough to make the Canadian national lacrosse team. His physicality also helped him in wrestling and boxing, where his competitive nature took him to places like Buffalo. Silvers caught the attention of comedian Joey Brown, who was in the audience. Brown saw something special in Silverheels and encouraged him to try acting. At the time, Silvers wasn't only the highest-scoring lacrosse player, but also the highest-paid one, so he could afford to consider a new career. Thanks to Brown, Silvers got his first job in Hollywood as a stuntman. His first movie role was in the 1937 musical Make-A-Wish, which starred Basil W.Th. Bone. The movie wasn't very good, but it was the start of Silverheels' career in Hollywood. After this short stay, he went back to lacrosse and boxing, though some reports say he stayed in Hollywood. In 1939, Silverheels made his official return to Tinseltown, again with help from Brown, who got him a few uncredited stunt jobs to make ends meet. To make ends meet, he worked as a busboy. Jay Silverheels was proud of his Mohawk heritage. Jay Silverheels carried his Mohawk heritage with great pride throughout his life. Silverheels grew up on the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, Canada. It was more than just a Mohawk community. It was a cultural community where identity, culture, and ancestry were very important. From a young age, he was taught to respect the traditions of his people, listen to their stories, and understand the weight of the legacy he inherited. These early lessons were not just family teachings. They were a way of life that shaped the core of who he was. Crossroads where people from all Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy lived. This unusual setting exposed Jay to a wide range of indigenous traditions and philosophies that were different from his own. He took this in with respect and curiosity, learning to see the similarities between native people from different tribes. This broad multicultural understanding of indigenous identity would become a defining part of his career later on, when Hollywood gave him the usual flat, one-dimensional roles meant to stand in for Indians. Looked up to Silverheels because he lived a life full of humanity, complexity, and dignity. Before he became famous as an actor, Silverheels was known for his amazing athleticism, especially in the game of lacrosse, which has sacred roots in native culture. His speed and agility on the field made him stand out, and he played with the North American Indian lacrosse team, traveling across Canada and the United States and even competing in international matches. But he wasn't limited to one sport. He was also a good boxer, and his physical prowess was one of the things that got him out of the reserve and into the wider world. Silverheels first came to the United States through lacrosse, where he became interested in show business. The glamour of Hollywood beckoned, But breaking into the industry was much harder than he thought it would be. He started with small, often uncredited roles as background warriors or unnamed natives. In westerns and adventure movies, Silverheels roles were often shallow and based on stereotypes, leaving little room for truth or nuance. But that didn't stop him. He saw something bigger than the roles he was given. He saw a chance to challenge the story. The road to Hollywood. Silverheels' path to Hollywood wasn't easy or glamorous. It was a steady climb marked by persistence, grit, and a deep sense of purpose. After leaving a successful athletic career, he entered the world of entertainment with cautious optimism. In the 1940s, Native American actors were often limited to narrow stereotypical roles, often reduced to background characters or caricatures in westerns. Silverheels knew what he was getting himself into. He started out with small roles in movies where he was usually cast as the unnamed Indian. These early roles didn't have much depth or complexity, but Jay approached each one with the same seriousness and professionalism that he had shown in his other roles. Whether he had lines or not, he gave every performance his full attention, determined to make the most of the little time he was given. Most of these early roles went uncredited, but they were still valuable because they gave him a foothold in the industry and taught him how film production worked. Wanting to go beyond what was being given to him, Jay made it a point to study the craft. He took acting classes and watched and learned everything he could about technique. He worked hard to build relationships with other actors, directors, and casting agents who saw his discipline and quiet charisma. This work behind the scenes was just as important as the work he did on screen. It was during this time that Jay Silverheels started what would become a groundbreaking career. It didn't take long for Silverheels to move from small budget movies to big budget ones. In 1940, he was cast as an unnamed Native American in the Warner Bros. Brothers' swashbuckler The Seahawk, starring Errol Flynn and Claude Rains, was much more important than anything Joe E. Brown had ever been in. Later that same year, he went back to RKO Studios to play another Indian role in Too Many Girls, a musical comedy based on the Broadway hit starring Desi Arnaz. It was in Too Many Girls that Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz met for the first time. By the time Jay Silverheels got to Hollywood, he had already worked steadily for most of the major studios. But in 1941, he took his first of many roles at Republic Studios, which was known as the King of the Bees, for its low-budget but action-packed movies. His first job there was on Jungle Girl 1941, a classic Saturday morning show with scary witch doctors, underground caves, wild animals, and lots of actors in gorilla suits. Silverheels was in it somewhere, but it was hard to find him in all the chaos. A year later, he was back on set with Lucille Ball and Iron Eye's Cody and Valley of the Chris Willowbird, a native actor who played 14 stereotypical roles before giving up on Hollywood, was in Sun 1942. The exterior shots were filmed in Ta Pueblo, New Mexico, the same location later used for Easy Rider 1969. After finishing Sun 1942, Silverheels jumped into the perils of Neoka, a Jungle Girl sequel in which he and Cody were cast as Arabs. Before leaving the Republic lot, he snuck in some second unit work for The Phantom, a serial adaptation of the popular comic strip hero. In 1943, Silverheels got a role in Daredevils of the West that was a big deal for him. It was the first time he got credit on screen, though he was still known as Harry Smith. He played the part of Kyoga, and in a rare departure from typical casting, he wasn't playing a native character. That role went to others, like Chief Many Treaties, who had played 32 Indian roles between 1931 and 1948, before he died suddenly, as did most of the native characters in the movies. Unfortunately, a lot of Daredevils of the West has been lost to time since Republic sold off a lot of its footage to be used in Hopalong Cassidy TV shows. Silverheels ended 1943 with a small role as a wrestler in The Girl from Monterey, a production from PRC, a studio known for making some of the cheapest and worst movies of the time. As a native actor, Silverheels would have to spend most of his career in westerns because Hollywood didn't have room for him in other types of movies. Notable roles for native actors that year included Errol Flynn in Northern Pursuit, 1943. Silvers had a small part as a sailor in the action-packed war movie Passage to Marseille, 1944, which starred Humphrey Bogart, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet, and Claude Rains. Silverheels made his debut at MGM in the comedy Lost in a Harem, 1944, which was a collaboration between Abbott and Costello and took place in the Middle East. The movie came out a year after Lou Costello's 2-year-old son was born, sadly drowned in the family pool. It was a terrible loss that Costello tried to deal with by working hard outside of Hollywood. He even patented a commercial ice-making machine called Serve Ice, which set the standard for modern ice machines. As for Lost in a Harem, its portrayal of an unnamed Arab country was so offensive that it was banned in Morocco and heavily censored in Syria. Many sources say Silverheels served in World War II, but details are hard to come by because he had a steady stream of movie roles from 1940 to 1944. He probably didn't have time to join the military, but 1945 was his slowest year in Hollywood, with only one credit for Song of the Song. It's possible that he joined the military late in the war, which would have given him the right to vote in Canada, which was illegal for Native people at the time because of racist laws. 1945 was also a turning point in Silverheels' career. He changed his name from Harry Smith to Silverheels Smith, a reference to the nickname he had earned as a lacrosse player, for he eventually took the name J. Silvers, which was a combination of his middle initial and his sports nickname. This would become his legacy. In 1946, he was back on set filming Romance of the West in California's Simi Valley for PRC, one of Hollywood's low-budget studios. The movie co-starred Matty Rubb, a white actor who had spent his early career playing newspaper boys so much that from 1931 to 1941, he was credited as a newsboy in 42 films after he stopped acting. In one of those roles, he switched to playing nameless henchmen and did so 36 times between 1939 and 1951. Romance of the West also had Chief Thundercloud, a Native American boxer, turned actor best known for playing Tonto in Republic's The Lone Ranger serials. Before J. Silverheels made the role famous on TV, Thundercloud was often billed as Chief Tonto Thundercloud in his other movies, including The Lone Ranger and its Impact. Jay's Mohawk heritage helped him get the part of Tonto on the TV show The Lone Ranger in 1949. It was a big break for him that made him famous across the country and cemented his place in entertainment history as one of the most famous Native American actors of his time. The search for Tonto wasn't easy. Producers were determined to find someone who could bring a sense of authenticity and presence to the role, someone who could stand next to the Lone Ranger not just as a sidekick, but as a character with strength and depth. His quiet intensity and improving acting skills made him stand out. His audition made a big impression, and after a lot of thought, he was chosen from a lot of other candidates. The Lone Ranger wasn't just another Western. It quickly became a cultural phenomenon. It debuted in a country hungry for heroes and moral clarity after World War II. The show struck a powerful chord with viewers, who were drawn to its themes of justice, loyalty, and friendship played out across the rough terrain of the American West. Frontier, every week, People watched as the masked Lone Ranger and his trusted friend Tonto brought order to the Wild West. Tonto J. Silverheels became an important part of that history. His performance helped shape the show's identity and contributed to its huge popularity. While Tonto wasn't immune to the era's stereotypes, Jay gave the role a dignity and emotional depth that hadn't been seen before in TV portrayals of Native Americans. He gave the character a lot of those things. With quiet strength, a sense of loyalty that went beyond the script, Silverhill gave viewers a more human and grounded character than they were used to seeing. Jay Silverhill's role as Tonto wasn't just a job, it was a statement. At a time when Native actors were often ignored or made fun of, he stepped into the spotlight of a major network and gave a performance that challenged expectations. It was a role that came with both great opportunity and great responsibility, and Silverheels carried it with grace. Unfortunately, even though The Lone Ranger was a big hit, it had some issues, especially with how it portrayed Native Americans. Jay Silverheels worked hard to make Tonto seem real and respectable, but there was only so much he could do at the time. Tonto was still written as a sidekick, which was typical of how Native American characters were portrayed in Hollywood at the time. The role brought Silvers a lot of attention, but after The Lone Ranger, he was often offered similar roles that didn't have much depth or complexity. This was frustrating for an actor who knew he had more to offer. Silverheels wasn't blind to the problems with the character that made him famous. In later interviews, he talked about how he had mixed feelings about Tonto. On the one hand, he was thankful for the attention and career boost, but on the other, he was very aware of the harmful stereotypes that the role continued to reinforce. His inner conflict stayed with him and became a driving force in his life after The Lone Ranger. It led to his later activism and push for better, more respectful portrayals of Native people in film and TV. He didn't just want to work, he wanted to see the industry change, and he used his small but powerful platform to speak out and push for that change. After The Lone Ranger ended, Silverheels kept working in Hollywood, but many of the roles he was offered were variations on the same typecast character. He struggled with being typecast as the Native American sidekick, but he didn't let that stop him. He took on a variety of roles in movies and TV shows, such as The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing and Santee, even though he often played Native American characters again. Silverheels always worked to give each role depth and complexity, making the most of every chance he was given. Even though he had trouble getting roles because of typhus, Silverheels' talent was recognized, and he was inducted into the Western Performers Hall of Fame at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, which was a fitting honor for his contributions to the genre. In addition to being an actor, Jay Silverheels was also a passionate activist who used his fame to push for better portrayals of Native Americans in movies and TV shows. He was determined to change the story, and he was successful. Founded the Indian Actors Workshop in Los Angeles. The workshop's goal was to train and mentor Native American actors, helping them break into mainstream Hollywood and giving them a chance to show off their skills in a more genuine and meaningful way. Silverheels also wanted to fight against the harmful stereotypes and false portrayals that had long dominated Native American roles in the industry. Heels had a lasting effect on both Hollywood and the Native American community. It was because of his acting and activism that future generations of Native American actors were able to play roles that were more nuanced, respectful, and true to their heritage. But Jay Silverheels was much more than just an actor and activist. He was also a devoted family man, a loyal friend, and a person with many interests that went far beyond the Hollywood spotlight. Despite his fame, Jay was a very private person when it came to his family life. He was married to Mary Dumas, and the two of them had 4 children together. During his career, he worked hard to keep his family out of the public eye, giving them a sense of normalcy and privacy. His children remember him fondly as a loving and supportive father who taught them the values of humility, hard work, and respect. Outside of his work in film and activism, Jay had many interests that helped him stay grounded. He loved fishing and found peace and comfort in nature. His love for sports never faded after he died. Jay was a huge lacrosse fan and kept up with sports all through his life. He was also creative and liked writing. He even wrote a few scripts that were never produced, showing his desire to express himself in new ways. Jay Silverheels' life was a rich tapestry of both successes and failures. In his later years, his health started to get worse, but his spirit stayed strong. In the late 1970s, Jay had a series of strokes that made it hard for him to move around, and even though these problems made it hard for him to keep up his acting career, he stayed dedicated to his advocacy work and continued to speak out for Native American rights, even when his health made it hard for him to be as active as he used to be. His legacy as an actor and an advocate continued to inspire and influence those who came after him. Jay Silverheels died on March 5, 1980, but his legacy lives on. He was honored in many ways that showed how great he was. Honors and memorials have been held in his honor, and documentaries have added to his legacy. His work in starting the Indian Actors Workshop continues to inspire, and his pioneering role in supporting Native American actors is still remembered today. Silverheels was more than just his famous role as Tonto. He was a multi-talented person who had a lasting impact on both Hollywood and the Native American community, from his days as an athlete to his later years as a pioneering actor and dedicated activist. His life story shows a journey of strength and complexity beyond the screen. He was a devoted family man, a mentor to those coming up after him, and a tireless advocate for change. His legacy goes far beyond his role as Tonto. He opened doors for future generations of Native American actors and left a profound mark on both the entertainment industry and society at large. At the time of his death on March 5, 1980, Jay Silverheels' net worth included his house and way of life. It was estimated that he was worth about $1 million. While this may not seem like much today, it was a lot of money for an actor who had to deal with racial discrimination and typecasting for a lot of his career. Silver's wealth came from acting, running businesses, and being an activist, but most of it came from his famous role as Tonto in the Lone Ranger TV series and the work he did in Hollywood after the show ended, largely determined by the roles he was offered, which, while often stereotypical, gave him a steady income in the 1950s and 1960s. For example, during the height of the Lone Ranger's popularity in the 1950s, he probably made around $1.00 to $2.00 per episode, which was a lot of money at the time. As television salaries continued to rise, so did Silver's pay, even though he was still often cast in Native American roles that didn't let him show off his full range. Despite the limitations of his roles, Silverheels lived a good life and made sure that his family and future were taken care of after he died. Silverheels' wealth was passed on to his wife Mary DeMa and their 4 children. Silvers had kept his family life private, keeping his personal matters out of the public eye, but it was clear that his family was important to him. His children, who remember him as a loving and humble father, inherited his estate, making sure that his legacy lived on in the family. Jay Silvers' home was a reflection of his values. Silverheels didn't live a fancy life. He lived a simple, peaceful life away from the attention of the public. His home was a simple but comfortable one that showed his desire for simplicity and peace. He made sure to put his family first by living in a comfortable home in a quiet suburb far from the action of Hollywood. It was a place where he could escape and enjoy time with his family without being affected by the fame. Silvers wasn't motivated by money, even though he was famous. His life was focused on family, sports, and activism, So his wealth came from his work rather than being the main goal of his career. When we look back on his life, we see a powerful story of authenticity, representation, and lasting impact. Jay Silverheels' journey shows how important it is to break down barriers and challenge stereotypes. His legacy goes beyond just fame, it's about the real change he made in the world. What do you think about his life? Leave a comment below and let us know. Thanks for watching and see you next time.